All right. So that all makes sense on the rundown then, Chris?
Yes, looks great to me.
Awesome. Well, good. Scott, do you have any questions?
Tom, I've got no questions.
Not one?
Not
Nary
one.
a question?
Not nary a question. A question not do I have.
Could you allo me that so I can make sure that...
I could, but
Did you pick up Allo yet, Chris?
I did once when I had a really bad sunburn. What are we talking about?
That Google messaging app.
Oh,
which will do nothing for your sunburn. Yeah.
No.
All right. Well, let's get this show on the road then. Here we go.
Quality content thrives through the support of those who benefit from its creation. If you gain value from the Daily Tech News Show, consider joining others like me who provide support. Learn how to help at dailytechnewsshow.com/support.
This is the Daily Tech News for Wednesday, September 21st, 2016. I'm Tom Merritt. Joining me today, as he does most Wednesdays, Mr. Scott Johnson is back in the house. How you doing, Scott?
I'm good. I'm thrilled. Always, Thomas.
Yes, it's thrilled to be. I'm thrilled to be Thomas. Is that what you said?
Yeah, I don't want to be like your mom and be the only person that refers to you as Thomas, but it just came out. I don't know why.
Yeah. Even she does it, really. But that's fine. I don't mind. We have a guest. I'm very excited to have along Chris Kohler from Wired, author of Power Up, How Japanese Video Games Gave the World an Extra Life. Here, particularly to talk about what happened at the Tokyo Game Show over the past several days. Chris, welcome back, or welcome to the show, I guess. This is the first time we've had you on.
Thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate it. I'm excited to talk about Tokyo Game Show.
Me too, actually. And I missed the Tokyo Game Show, but I went to Japan and Korea, like it's been 2 weeks ago now. So I was in Akihabara kind of wandering around. I was just there. My timing was off.
Maybe your timing was really good. You got to do all the Akihabara shopping before everybody else came in and took all the video games.
Yeah, exactly. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Also, Scott, Blizzard announced it's phasing out the name BattleNet in favor of just calling things Blizzard after Chris Metzen retires.
Yeah, the coincidence? I don't know. No, actually, I got an email on the Instance email account today saying big conspiracy about how they think that the reason Chris left is because they were changing the name of BattleNet.
Oh, yeah. Oh, That's why I'd quit my job.
It's absolutely why. I refuse to change BattleNet. You've seen the last of me.
Yeah.
Can't possibly, because he has, more money than God. And,
right. It can't possibly
do what any of us would do in that situation. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Couldn't possibly be the reasons he gave us. But yeah, it is kind of interesting in the sense that it is a name that we're all used to saying. It was pretty historic in terms of what it was when it was launched. And kind of with them, though, that it doesn't really matter what you call it now. So make it what you want to make it.
All right, here are some more top stories. Google released its new messaging app, Allo, A-L-L-O, for iOS and Android. It includes the Google Assistant, which can help you, do things like find restaurants, get information about your trips, the kind of smart assistant stuff that Siri and Echo and Alexa and all of those do. End-to-end encryption is available in the app, but it's not on by default. You have to use the incognito mode for each of your conversations. Every time you start a conversation, you've got to start it in incognito if you want it to be end-to-end encrypted. Also, Google changed one of its privacy features. When they announced Allo back at I.O., they said that Allo conversations would be not logged or stored, that they wouldn't be end-to-end encrypted so they can analyze them for data to help Google Assistant, but they would not store your messages. They have changed that. They had decided that they will, in fact, store your messages by default unless you go in and delete them from your history. Now, that still doesn't apply to incognito. That's still end-to-end encrypted. The Verge reports Google made the change to improve Google Assistant's Smart Replies feature. That's the one that generates suggested responses for you, like, thank you, okay, interesting.
Yeah, Tom and I had a little experience earlier with this. We went a little back and forth. As you can see there at home, if you're watching the video, I've got precisely two contacts. I have Tom Merritt and I have Google Assistant. So those are my two friends. And they're both working out just great. I actually am pretty impressed with some of what I saw. I like the idea that I could just type to you the word pizza, and it was smart enough to know that maybe I want to order some. And I hit that, and boom, I was given locations, directions, order online, that sort of stuff. Very sort of Google results, but also very chat interfacey. and you're able to see those too. You did the same thing with Movie Times in LA. So I could see how this could be helpful in line conversations when you're trying to get something done, like where are we going to meet up, or do we need to make reservations, or some other substantive work that usually takes you out of the app to do something else. Outside of that, as the chat app itself, like the actual interaction between you and I or anyone else, I don't know, man. I'm not blown away. It's okay. And I hate to say this because I usually think Apple stock stuff's never really that great, but the new iMessage stuff kind of blows this one away in terms of those features. It, of course, doesn't feature any of these smart abilities outside of maybe a date or a time, and they're letting you calendar that sort of thing. But it's not the funnest app, let's put it that way. But the AI and the machine learning, some potential there.
Yeah, so all you have to do if you want to set up a movie is make sure that both you and all the people who you want to set up the movie with are on Google Allo, and it will integrate with text messaging, not as seamlessly as iMessage or even Hangouts used to. It sends a note to the person you're SMSing with saying, this is being sent from a Google Allo message account. You can get your Google Allo by downloading it from here, which is a little bit pluggy. And Chris, not everybody has it. Doesn't sound like you have gotten on the Allo train yet.
I have not yet gotten onto the Allo train. This is really this is almost the first time hearing about the actual details. Will it, if I type in where do I hide a body, will it bring up like a map to the nearest desert or something like that? Because ultimately that would be really relevant to.
That is an important question that I will ask right now. Where do I hide a body?
Doing real journalism here.
Yeah.
You got to make sure you start it as make sure it's an incognito message just in case. You know.
And make sure it's end-to-end encrypted.
It responds with a San Francisco Chronicle article called "One Thing Not to Ask Siri: Where to Hide a Body."
Oh.
Whoops. Well, we're in it deep now.
Not terribly helpful, and also throwing shade at Siri.
If you were using Google Allo to find out more about Siri, I suppose that was helpful. But
yeah, you know what's funny is this is one of the few times where an app came out and I was more optimistic about it before I started using it. Usually I'm fairly skeptical based on things I hear, and then I start using it and I find things. I'm like, well, actually this works better. This, I was very like, okay, yeah, it can integrate with SMS. It integrates a lot clunkier than I expected. It has little AI. The AI in there is okay. I'm not going to slag on it, but it's not any better than what I'm used to experiencing from Amazon or Apple. So it's not blowing me out of the water. I'm not sure that. Whereas before I thought, well, this is a really good way to get people to use a messaging app. I'm not sure that's true anymore.
Yeah, and if you're using it just for, hey, I need to find some stuff or do some stuff, I would argue Google already has better apps out there that do better with voice, for example. I've got to type all this in, and I got to make sure those words are right. And if I don't give it all the proper rights, I'm not going to get the data I want anyway. And some of the rights they're asking for access to various pieces of data are pretty deep. So I don't know, man. I feel like they would have been a little bit better off adding these kinds of features to an existing product rather than launching a whole new one. Let's give it some days and let's see how it goes. But
yeah, no, Gouchim in our chat room says you must say the obligatory, it will get better with use because it's an AI.
Yeah, or they'll drop it one way or the other, right? Also in the news, Facebook will live stream the U.S. presidential debates in cooperation with ABC, and Twitter will do the same in partnership with Bloomberg and, of course, YouTube. Tom's wife works for YouTube. They'll have coverage from Bloomberg, PBS, The Washington Post, and Telemundo, as well as streams from YouTube live users. But NBC is partnering with AltSpace R to stream the debates in virtual reality. That's right, VR. It's going to be hosted by Al Roker's avatar from the Virtual Democracy Plaza. NBC will also stream Q&As, analysis, and comedy shows, and more leading up to the election night coverage. By the way, that's AltSpace VR, not AltSpace R.
Watching, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
When you're watching the presidential debate in VR, how can you tell if you're getting motion sickness or just regular sickness
or just political sickness? Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's a fair question. It is going to muddy the waters on that scientific endeavor.
Yeah, very well might. If you have an Oculus Rift or an HTC Vive or even a Samsung Gear VR, you'll be able to get the AltSpace VR app, which I've seen on at least my HTC I've seen. 2D versions of the stream are all going to be at altvr.com/NBC News. Coverage starts Wednesday night. I can tell you this as a regular webcomic artist, which is one of the things I do. This story gave me a really great idea today, and you'll see that come to life later. But, Tom, I don't know if I'm ready for being able to walk right up close to these people that have driven me nuts for so long over the last, a year and a half. But at the same time, I'm very curious how it's going to feel, and I wonder how much of that they're going to let me get close up to. In other words, are they going to let me teleport around to different spots the way you do with typical 360 video? Is it just one camera or two cameras? Or I guess they're multi-lens cameras, but are these just in set spots and I'm only going to have one unchangeable
Is it going to be
view?
like moderator's viewpoint, and then I can just kind of turn around and see the other? Because they're billing it as a viewing party. So I imagine you'll be in a room with other avatars, and how does that room integrate with the 360 video? Is it, like you say, is it multiple perspectives, etc.? I think really the underlying story to this is less about the VR. That's a good headline grabber for NBC, and it is interesting to see people starting to push this, this technology out there a little now that there's folks willing to consume it and see what works and what doesn't. But you can watch the presidential debates on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. You don't need to have any kind of television service to do this. And it's part of Twitter's, with the NFL last week premiering on Twitter, it's part of Twitter's move to becoming a real live event destination. And of course, Facebook Live wants to be seen as that as well. Yeah.
I'm mostly interested in just VR as a streaming platform in its infancy is a little scary in that we still have issues like bandwidth and latency and things that are going to affect this. So if something goes wrong at some point in this feed, what happens to me as a user wearing the headset? Will I get motion sick because we're going to be stuttering all over the place? Or are we going to have a pretty good buffer into that thing? Are we going to be delayed more than other streams are? Like, I have a lot of just kind of technical questions about that, and it'll be fun to see how they do that. But if this ends up just being a room and it's me and a bunch of low poly count people standing around in a room watching a scene of this thing, I will probably take the headset off and watch it on YouTube.
It'll be a bunch of me's from Mitoma.
Al Roker me telling me what to do and where to look. All right.
Chris, will you, if you were to watch, let's phrase it this way. If you were to watch the presidential debate, would you watch it just on regular TV like always, or would you be willing to try one of these ways?
No, I feel like I would watch it on regular television, if only because it's something that I would probably drift in and out of. You know what I mean? Like in VR at this point, you can't really like have something on in the background while you're doing other things and decide to pay attention to it or stop. It's really you're signing up for 3 hours of Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump yelling at each other. And like that's what you're exclusively doing. So I don't actually think that I would do it in VR.
But maybe Twitter in the background tab. Now that you put it that way, it makes me actually want to use Facebook or Twitter more rather than have it up on the TV, because then I could just have it off in the background and pop over if I need to.
Right.
Or let me play a VR game where this can be just a little P&P down in the corners. So I'm playing, I'm saving the universe and then hearing about how my own is crashing down.
I think we're going to want a little bit more of that out of our VR. In fact, we could even talk about this later on because, Sony did show off something for PlayStation VR where it would create a virtualized version of your smartphone within VR. So you can come home, and if you just want to sit and look at your phone and read social media, you can do that, but you can put on the VR helmet and suddenly be on the beach. But then you still have your smartphone there. Which is kind of weird and struck me as like something out of WALL-E. But at the same time, it was like, oh, okay, that's convenient because you're closing off this sort of like crappy apartment around you and transporting yourself to a calmer place, but you're not cutting yourself off from essentially the real world while you're doing that.
Which could be a big selling point in places like New York and Tokyo. Yeah. Well, if NBC is smart, they will have avatars for Jill Stein and Gary Johnson sitting in the front row of their virtual couch.
I wondered how they were going to sneak them in, and now I think we know.
The Financial Times reports Apple approached automaker McLaren to discuss an acquisition or strategic investment. McLaren's best known for Formula One racing, of course. Also makes road cars. They made the P1 hybrid, so they've made electric cars. Also supplies parts to car makers and racing teams. Now, McLaren emailed a statement to The Verge that said, We can confirm that McLaren is not in discussion with Apple in respect of any potential investment. So at least McLaren PR flatly denying this, which made me say, okay, not a story anymore. But The Verge pointed out in an interesting article that the acquisition might still make sense. McLaren has expertise in building drivetrains and vehicle control systems. They have experience with that supply chain, those supplier OEM relationships that are very difficult for someone to break into. Also works with carbon composites, aluminum, carbon fiber, and McLaren Applied Technologies works with companies to provide R&D and technology. And they talk about the general design gestalt of McLaren with the white floors in their factories just fitting in with Apple culture. So yes, McLaren's saying there's no conversations, but let's lean back and say she.
Yeah, well, they say that they're not in discussion with Apple in respect of any potential investment. That doesn't necessarily rule out acquisition.
They're talking yesterday, they're going to talk tomorrow, but no talks. Yeah, we could parse it, that's for sure.
Sure, but outside of that, it makes sense to me. They're kind of the Siri of car makers for them, in that Apple looked at the whole voice-controlled sort of assistant world and said, "What do we do? We're going to make our own. Well, why don't we buy the thing that works so far?" And they did, and then they built on it, and they've made it better in some minds. This could be the same thing. It's like saying, well, look, why go through all the trouble of building this groundwork when somebody's already there? We have more cash than anyone. Let's just buy them, go from there. It already sort of fits within, like you said, their culture, their way of thinking what they might do with cars. What would be interesting to see is if they did this, would they stay in the business of Formula One racing, or would that go away? And
like if Apple acquired McLaren, yeah. I mean, how do you get rid of the main thing that a company like that is known for? And Beats kept headphones, right?
So that's what leads to doubts on this story. Is that that is such
Chris,
a big thing? You know?
What's your confidence level, Chris, about Apple even getting into the car space?
Ooh. I feel like it's going to at some point. I feel like it's going to on a long enough timeline, simply because I am convinced at the idea that self-driving cars are a thing, that we're going to look back when I'm 80 years old. I'm going to be telling stories about they used to let humans drive cars. Can you believe it?
That's crazy, Grandpa.
And if that's a space that's going to happen, then it would appear to me that maybe Apple would want to be in that as well. But then again, everybody thought Apple was going to release a television, but now it almost seems like Apple is going to cause the television to simply become obsolete, right?
Yeah, just skip right past it. Exactly.
Right. I mean, the same thing with video games. I mean, everybody was, when is Apple going to release Apple TV that plays games? And it did, and it's had no impact, probably because instead of getting into the console business and destroying it, Apple actually is sort of obviating the need for that console business via the smartphones and the tablet game ecosystems that it already has. But then again, we need to find a different way of moving human bodies from place to place. So if Apple leapfrogs the car, then it will simply introduce the teleporter.
Yeah, no, I like that. Apple just is like, forget it. No, we're going to disrupt teleportation. We've moved on.
Yeah.
Of course, we're not buying McLaren.
And you're really, in that case, you're really going to want to wait for the Teleporter 7 Plus, versus the Teleporter 7, because that's going to have some bad bugs.
Wow, but they removed the headphone jack on that one.
They took out the keyport.
It's going to be bad when Apple is finally like, we now have the courage. We're going to teleport your entire body except for your appendix, because you don't need it anymore.
Exactly. Designed it out.
Appendix. Yeah. Yep.
Actually, that sounds like not a bad idea. Along with the limited release of community section on the channels, YouTube has started a program called YouTube Heroes. That won't confuse anyone looking for Heroes of the Storm players on YouTube. Anyway, people who help moderate comments and videos will earn points. They're kind of gamifying things. Like 1 point for accurately identifying a video that doesn't comply with your standards, or 10 points for the best answer to a help question. As you earn points, you rise through 5 levels where you receive additional moderation tools, and at level 5, the ability to test new YouTube features before they roll out to the general public.
Round the horn. Who thinks that this will have a discernible effect on the cesspool of YouTube comments?
Not really.
No. Well, you
Good
get
try.
100 points for leaving a racist YouTube comment, which I think is just a terrible idea.
Yeah, here's the thing. What will happen, Tom, and I think we all maybe know this in our hearts, but when these sorts of things happen, they come from a good place. They come from all the best intentions. But the side that we're trying to combat just ramps it up, and we'll figure out ways around it, on top of it, and under it. And so I suspect that we will end up with a little bit of a worse problem, maybe at least at the beginning. There's no way this magically cleans up the cesspool.
Yeah, I agree. T2T2 in our chat room says dead in 3 months, maybe moribund at best in 3 months. It just doesn't offer enough interest to really have the critical mass that it would need to have an effect. Yep. I don't think. Tesla rolled out a security update to its Model S sedan after security researchers at Tencent in China demonstrated remote access to the car. The hack could access the brakes on a moving Model S, open the trunk, and activate the windshield wipers. It did require the car to have a browser active and be connected to a compromised Wi-Fi hotspot. Tesla sent out over-the-air security patch within 10 days of the exploit being disclosed to them, so you shouldn't be vulnerable to it now. Tesla also released version 8 of Autopilot Tuesday night, which includes a major change to how object detection works. Radar will help camera sensors detect objects rather than just relying on the camera sensors, and this new system might have avoided the crash that killed Josh Brown on May 7th.
If you had read this article to me 10 years ago and said that this will be for a car company, despite the fact that you're speaking about it as if it's a version of Word or something, I would have laughed at you. But I just want to point out where we're at in 2016.
Yeah.
The idea that we've got over-the-air updates happening to software versions of a car somebody's driving, it's actually really cool and kind of insane. So I'm glad to see them responding quickly. 10 days is pretty quick to have a fix for, I think. I don't know what the standard for that should be, but it feels...
Yeah, from somebody alerting you 0 day, right? It's not too bad.
Yeah, it's not bad. Chris, what do you think about the idea of your car getting updated over the air?
I just try to be excited about these things and not consider the potential, disaster of like the car version of like waking up in the morning in a conference and your computer's like, hey, we're upgrading you to Windows 8, so just wait around for another 5 hours or so.
Yeah, always like, dismissing the patch update when you get in the car and then realizing your windshield wipers aren't under your control anymore.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Probably should have updated at some point. Yeah.
In the world's continuing pursuit to catch reality up to the movie Back to the Future 2, the least good one of the three, the Cubs will win the World Series this year, and Nike will come out with self-lacing shoes. That's right. Sure to be the first of those that Tom may attempt as a Cardinals fan to jinx the Cubs. But anyway, the self-lacing shoes thing is 100% real. Nike Hyper Adapt 1.0 will be available at select U.S. retail locations by appointment beginning in November. That's on the 28th. More details on price and how to get an appointment will arrive in the next few weeks. Battery life is claimed to be 2 weeks. It comes with magnetic chargers and charges fully in 3 hours.
I feel like I need to explain that, yes, I did write that for Scott because the best way for a Cardinals fan to approach the end of the season is to declare that the Cubs have no chance of not winning the World Series. Of course they will.
I keep seeing you put it on Twitter, and I keep thinking, how many people know what he's talking about?
Yeah, but Nike self-lacing shoes. Now, here's the thing. I'm a little upset at these, Scott, because they don't lace like they did in Back to the Future 2. They're just kind of straps that sense where your foot is and tighten the shoe around it.
Which is cool.
You don't really need laces. They're doing laces just as a kind of a gimmick.
I agree, and this is how this stuff usually goes. So Captain Kirk wants us to have a communicator with a little flip-up plastic protector lid. And that idea didn't last very long, and now we all have these super exposed phones. Some of us have them in cases with flaps. But for the most part, the good ideas in fiction end up being tailored down to something else that makes more practical sense. And it absolutely is more practical to have these straps tighten than it does to have these autonomous tendril-like shoelaces reanimate themselves and tie them in a knot in the way that they would if it was a human hand doing it.
And they also adjust as you run. I mean, they are meant for athletes. They did a lot of design work to make sure that they didn't get in the way of somebody who wants to use these in running, in jogging, and they can loosen up as well as tighten. Yeah. Chris, would you buy a pair of these?
I own a pair of Nike shoes that I got at Payless the other day. It's probably about as close as I'm going to get at this point. They are on the cover of I believe, on the cover of the latest issue of Wired, where I work.
With your Payless shoes or these?
Somehow yes. No, my Payless shoes, obviously. I am a fashion icon. I don't know if you know.
Congratulations on that.
I was just going to say, this sounds like the kind of thing that would show up on the cover of Wired, and I can't believe you just...
Oh, it is. Yeah, no, Wired had the inside story about this. Yeah.
Yep.
Well, thanks to all those who participate in our subreddit. Submit stories and vote on them at dailytechnewsshow.reddit.com. All right, let's get to talking about the Tokyo Game Show. Picking up right where you were mentioning earlier, VR was center stage, it sounded like.
Yeah, for sure. Yep. I mean, PlayStation VR, of course, is coming out very, very soon. It's coming out in early October worldwide. So, of course, Sony, I mean, not all of Sony's booth, but a great proportion of Sony's booth and like an adjunct booth that they had in a different hall. Were just filled with PlayStation VR kiosks, lots and lots of games that are getting very close to finish. But, of course, Vive was there, HTC was there showing stuff off, and there were just any number of other companies showing off new and crazy things with VR. And there were over, I mean, Tokyo Game Show is not really a huge show in terms of number of titles, but there were over 100 VR games on the show floor.
And did you feel like it was primarily a Sony pushed sort of thing, like that they were the front and center on VR, or did you feel like it was sort of kind of an industry-wide excitement, or is it mainly Sony with all the energy right now by getting their product out?
Well, I mean, certainly for the major Japanese companies, it is Sony that's really on the bleeding edge of the whole thing. I mean, they are really going to be releasing what could be with PlayStation VR, like, you know, the most mass market VR system yet. And of course, they've lined it up with all kinds of, you know, well-known video game franchises, you know, versus sort of like no-name tech demos and things like that. But again, like, you know, HTC was there, other companies were there, you know, with fairly substantial booths and showing things off. So it's not just Sony.
Did you walk away going, oh man, that's the one VR game / experience I must have after all this dust settles this fall or whenever it comes out? Did anything jump out at you like that?
A few things did. I mean, I think I feel like the most compelling PlayStation VR launch title, ironically, because it was not originally a VR game, is going to be Rez Infinite, based on the great, you know, classic Dreamcast and PlayStation 2 game Rez. So that has the original game, but you can also play it in VR, which essentially is just like playing the original game, except where you can kind of turn your head around and look everywhere. And typically things that weren't in VR before being put into VR is a bad idea, but Rez just really works perfectly, considering the game was always, it's an on-rails game. It always accelerates the exact same speed. It just works in VR. Then they've actually, which I played for the first time, a brand new level. It's called Area X. Which is very much designed for VR, and lets you kind of move around. If you know Rez and the game's very much on rails, this one sort of lets you float around and fly around freely in 3D space while still feeling very much like Rez. I think everybody who came away from that was like, oh, this is going to be great.
Did that impress you, or did it make you feel like, hey, this isn't Rez the way I used to do it? You're supposed to be on rails. Did that feel like a disconnected thing to you, or a good thing?
I think that it is a good thing, because I think they wanted to try to move beyond. They could have made another Rez level, you know, but I think they wanted to try, like, okay, now that we have VR, let's try doing something that is sort of VR first. And the thing is, it's just very easy to move yourself around in Rez, in the Area X VR experience, because you just go where you're looking. Like, you just look where you want to go and your character starts moving in that direction. And so it takes away the issue of, if you were trying to do this just with a controller, you know, you'd have to move your character around with the joystick, but then, well, you know, how do you kind of like manipulate, you know, in 3 different axes? It would have been a lot more difficult. And I do want to stress, by the way, if you don't have PlayStation VR, Rez Infinite, everything, all the content is playable outside of VR as well. And I actually played it also on a big, you know, ridiculous $8,000, I don't even know, 4K television, because it's going to support PlayStation Pro, and you'll be able to play, if you want to play Rez, you know, this standard definition game, you know, now if you want to play it literally in 4K, you can do that, and it just, of course, it looks more beautiful than ever, right?
Was there a lot of 4K stuff on display yet?
Yeah, that's what
Just a touch. When I went to Sony's PlayStation press conference, they had a couple of 4K TVs outside running hands-off demos, one of which was Final Fantasy 15. So you can get a sense of kind of what that's going to look like in 4K. It's not, for me, it's not something that like makes me want to run out and my life savings on a 4K television. Like, I'm okay. But, you know, it's certainly, it's interesting to see what's going to come down the line once these things get cheaper.
And I assume PlayStation 4 Pro rather was on display everywhere as well. Were most of the VR experiences hooked up to PlayStation Pros, or do we know?
No, they were running on standard PlayStations. I think they want to give people the experience of, well, this is what it's going to be like on the PlayStation 4 that you already own. Or in the case of Japan, that you don't already own, because they really haven't sold very many PlayStation 4. So I think they're hoping that VR is going to kick that up a notch as well.
Well, speaking of games that everybody's owned before, if anyone who has been to or knows about Akihabara and that whole area, the retro gaming collection craze is kind of on fire and has been for a couple of years now. Is that affecting the games business in Japan in other positive ways, other than, you know, the interest is always exciting and fun, but is it impacting the industry itself, or some of the manufacturers getting more interested in up-resing some of their old games and bringing classic titles to light and that sort of thing?
We are seeing that, for sure. I think we're seeing this renewed interest in older games, and that is causing people to look at, Nintendo has always had Virtual Console, where you could download old games on its game platforms. But now we're seeing, even more obscure old games come back as PlayStation 4 titles. Like there's a Sega Saturn game called Battle Gattaca, which is like this really expensive shooter. The only way to play it was to buy the original Sega Saturn disc. It was hundreds of dollars, and I think in part because of the rising prices, these classic games are kind of becoming very expensive collector's items. When people see that much money getting thrown around, it makes publishers go, "Oh, we own this? Like, we should get some of this money." So that's going to come out on, PlayStation 4 in a, kind of revised edition. So we are definitely seeing people look at their back catalogs and saying, "Oh, if our game is selling for $500, like maybe we should actually re-release it now. Maybe there's something going on."
Yeah. Are you? That makes me think, are we seeing less new experiences at TGS on consoles and more mobile, more clearly the VR space is all about consoles in this case, but are you seeing kind of less of the, here's the 20 AAA Japanese titles coming out to consoles this year, and here are the 2 or 3 weird things? It sounds like you're seeing a lot more small stuff, weird stuff, mobile stuff than you are traditional console titles.
I mean, Tokyo Game Show always used to be filled with small and weird stuff, but it's still full of small and weird stuff. But they're attracting even more of that now. They've got a big indie games area, and I think it's very inexpensive if you've got a game that they like. It's very inexpensive to be able to go there and show your game off. There are a lot of mobile games. So one of the things people don't really know about the mobile game booths at Tokyo Game Show is that often the game is already out. People already have it on their phones. People are going to the booth, already play the game, but they're giving you some sort of an experience. So like for the romance games that are very popular with women, you can go and meet like an actor who like portrays one of the characters in the game, or something along those lines, right? It's like this very expensive like user acquisition tactic. There's going to be hundreds of thousands, not hundreds of thousands, but like tens of thousands of people at Tokyo Game Show, and they're going to come by and see these booths, and maybe they're going to download your mobile game, and maybe they're going to pay you, and that's what a lot of the booths are going towards. The major publishers are still there, but they maybe only have 1 or 2 games in their booth. Maybe they have like 1 game playable in their booth. The number of top tier console titles has shrunk significantly, and everybody's kind of just they're banking on like this one hit or that one hit and hoping that it does really well. Which
unlike E3,
dangerous.
Tokyo Game Show is open to the public, right?
It is open to the public on the last 2 days.
Last 2 days, okay.
So this is what would, if E3 ever did this, I bet you they'd have to add days so that people could get their business done, and then also the public could come in. A lot of people in the games industry really complain about Gamescom, because Gamescom is like 4 or 5 days, I want to say. Like it's this long show, and sometimes people have to work the whole thing, but Tokyo Game Show is definitely that way, where the first 2 days are business days, and then the second 2 days are public days. So it's a longer show than E3.
Well, thank you, Chris, for letting us know your insights on this. Of course, you've written up some great articles over at Wired. I was very happy to see in one of your articles that Space Channel 5 is popping its head.
Oh,
back
man.
up.
Oh, my goodness. That was so. The crazy part is, of course, Space Channel 5 was originally a Dreamcast game that was developed by the same team that did Rez. So, weirdly enough, here we're at Tokyo Game Show, and like two of the biggest VR things everybody wants to do are Space Channel 5 and Rez. Space Channel 5. The demo, there wasn't much to the demo. It was really just sort of like watching the level 1 of Space Channel 5 kind of go on all around you, but it was beautiful. It looked just like being in a Dreamcast game. There was a little bit of interactivity, but the important thing is the developer is very excited about wanting to do more Space Channel 5 in VR, and so fingers crossed that it does well. Palmer Luckey actually went and played it. It was at the HTC booth, and he went down and he played it, and he was very happy. He was a very happy man afterwards.
There is video of Palmer doing this embedded on your story too, which is great.
There certainly is. Yes, I just so happened to be there.
He's got a Vive on when he's doing it, because that's amazing.
He's got a Vive on while he's doing it. He doesn't. I mean, he did a whole tour of the whole show and went to Sony's booth and played the games out in public. I don't think he really cares. He plays all the VR everything.
You gotta see what the competition's up to. Sure.
He was very excitedly talking to the developer of Space Channel 5 afterwards. So fingers crossed it all spins up and becomes a real thing and not a sort of a trade demo event. But it was very exciting to see that.
Oh, I have one last question. I know you've got an article of this up on Wired. Did you get to play Last Guardian? And if you did, are we ever going to get it? And how was it?
Oh, I did get to play The Last Guardian. I think it's great. Like I'm very nervous, of course, because I love Eco. I love Shadow of the Colossus, and this is this third game in that trilogy that we've been waiting for a really long time. And I think coming out of my Tokyo Game Show demo, I understand why it was in development hell for such a long time, because like I can see the fundamental design problem of having to there's a giant monster and you have to use that monster to solve puzzles, but we want the monster to feel like a real monster, like a real companion for you, which means that maybe he's not always going to do the thing exactly like you want him to, but it's a puzzle game. So you kind of, as a player, you kind of expect the game is going to always set you up for success if you're doing the right thing in the puzzle. So I kind of came out of that thinking okay, I'm really going to take my time. I'm not going to get frustrated. I'm going to just enjoy this, because who knows when we're going to get another game like this again. So I'm not going to try to rush through it or get mad and just try to take it as it is.
Wow.
But
it's like training a dog.
I mean, that's essentially the idea. And imagine how difficult this must have been to get it right. And I think that the most recent delay kind of got pushed back to December is really, they did fundamentally kind of change the controls, because if you played Eco or Shadow of the Colossus, to hold on to a ledge, you've got to be holding a button constantly. But with this build, it was in the E3 build where you had to hold the R1 button all the time to grip onto things. But with this build, they took that out, and I think they're trying to make the game more friendly to players, even if it comes at a cost of it doesn't really feel like Shadow of the Colossus anymore. I think they really want this to resonate with people, and they don't want people to get frustrated and not play it. So it's interesting. There's some people who came out of that demo feeling worse than I did. You know what I mean? Feeling I don't know, maybe a little bit concerned. But I mean, I think it's definitely going to make this December date. I think it's coming out. What I've seen so far is beautiful. There's just been pure moments of joy that I've had while playing it. So I don't know. Fingers crossed. We've only seen this little teeny tiny slice of it so far. So I really want to see the whole thing.
Real quickly, let's get to our pick of the day. I want to point you to our own column from professional driver Sakani Wright. A weekly column on dailytechnewsshow.com discussing ride-sharing from the driver's perspective. And this week, he calls me out and my love of Waze, arguing, and I have to admit fairly persuasively, why for a pro driver Google Maps is much better. Now Google loves this debate because they own both of these apps, but I put in my lame defense of my love of Waze in a comment there, but go check it out, dailytechnewsshow.com. Look for Your Professional Driver by Sakani Wright, and send your picks to us, feedback at dailytechnewsshow.com. One quick message Matt wrote in to remind us of Google's progressive web apps, which let Chrome on Android users get an app experience in the browser. You can even save web apps to your home screen, have an offline experience. Devs can do applications and more. Matt says, I think this is the future for smartphone app developers, and I predict that in a few years, smartphone users will be spending most of their time in these kind of web apps. Bold prediction that we'll just be treating web apps like regular apps, and you won't have app stores anymore.
Yeah. Remember who told us that before? Steve Jobs, I believe is his name. And
yeah, you won't need... Well, that was because they didn't launch with the App Store. I always felt like that was just kind of covering up.
Oh, for sure. Like they were absolutely covering up. But I also think there was a spark of, that kind of makes sense. And you and I have always been proponents of like, hey, if it works good on the web, why you even need to make...
I mean, the Financial Times for years has had a web app that is on par with any regular app that you could get. It works great. So, thank you, Chris Kohler, for joining us today. Remind folks where they can find your work and about the revision to your book.
So just hit up wired.com and go look for the culture section where all my stories about video games appear. So I have this old book that I wrote in 2004. It was my first book called Power Up, How Japanese Video Games Gave the World an Extra Life. Inside stories, the creation of Super Mario, Final Fantasy, Eco actually was another one. It's actually going to be back in print finally for the first time in like a decade via Dover Publications, and it's coming out on October 19th.
I am a fan of the Dover publications, to be honest. When I worked at a bookstore, those were always I would hoard those and try to take them home as often as possible. So
please,
really cool.
Please hoard these. Buy as many copies as you want.
We've got a link to it in the show notes, so go check it out. Or just look for Power Up, How Japanese Video Games Gave the World an Extra Life. Thank you again, Chris. It was great talking with you today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Scott, anything to let folks know about before we let you go?
Just watch for my dumb VR joke on the comic later today, myextralife.com, or I'll be posting it on Twitter at Scott Johnson. And always good to be here, sir.
I am looking forward to that. I love your comics, so I can't wait to see what it is. DailyTechNewsShow.com/support will tell you all the ways you can support the show. We don't take advertising. We're supported entirely by our listeners. Thank you for making that possible. And we're rejiggering our rewards on the Patreon. So if you are a patron, go check that out. There's a posting up there today where you can see what we're doing, and you can become a patron at patreon.com/DTNS. Our email address is feedback@dailytechnewsshow.com. You can catch us live, if you didn't know, Monday through Friday, 4:30 p.m. Eastern Time at alphageekradio.com and diamondclub.tv for video. And you can visit our website anytime you want, dailytechnewsshow.com. Tomorrow with Justin Robert Young. Talk to you then.
This show is part of the Frog Pants Network. Get more at frogpants.com.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.
That was a great show.
Oh.
Thank you, Chris.
Good.
Awesome.
Yeah,
No,
thanks,
Chris.
Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah, and big thanks to your jet lag for making it sound like you don't have any. You sound great.
It's funny because now that I have a wife and child, it's like I can't really sleep in anymore, Like I used to kind of come home hours and hours on end, and now it's like, oh, okay, wait, we're getting up? Okay, all right, yeah, okay, I'm up.
Yeah. Having just experienced that, I could tell you that's no mean trick. So extra appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
We'll see. The first chance, every now and again, I think I'm okay, and then it's like, all right, well, I'm totally over jet lag now, and then I'll just go to sleep, and nobody will wake me up, and then I'll get up at like 2, and I'll be like, oh.
I guess I'm not over jet. Yeah, it took me about 5-6 days to feel back to normal, I think.
Yep.
So we always just hang out on the stream while I publish the show and chat, but that's totally informal. If you need to go, and thank you very much for taking the time to chat with us.
Okay, I can stick around a little bit.
Okay, cool.
Show titles.
Yeah, what should we call this?
So the viewers for Chris, this is over at showbot.tv. This is where the people watch the live stream or listen to the live stream put in their suggestions. Allo, Mr. NSA from Beatmaster at the top, followed by Google, Can I See Your Allo? There's also Motion Sickness or Regular Sickness. You say Google, I say Allo. Losingbattle.net. Allo Fish, Allo Official Intelligence. Get it? Allo Official.
Yeah.
Get it. Political Sickness. Presidential debates in VR. You won't believe it's real. That's pretty funny. Tesla S-ploit.
Clever.
Clever. These are very clever. Virtual and reality. Tokyo Drift.
All bats today in there.
VR is huge.
Now we're starting to scrape the bottom.
Okay. If the self-lace chute fits.
Nah, that's funny.
Blame the POTA bait nausea on the VR. That's kind of mouthy.
Dude, where's my car update?
I had a joke.
That's pretty good.
Back in the 90s, we used to joke, like, when cars got this technologically sophisticated, it's like, there's going to be a time where you're going to complain your car won't boot. Like, it just won't boot. You won't say it won't start. You'll just say it won't boot. You say, my car won't boot.
I called a self-driving car. We won't even say self-driving car, though. We'll just say, I called a car, and it crashed. And that won't mean it hit anything. Yeah. It'll mean, like, it just, like, the computer inside crashed.
So wait, where are the title suggestions again?
Showbot.tv.
So, yeah.
Showbot.tv.
SHOWBOT.
There we go.
You can click on the line you like, and it'll count a vote for you.
Booting your car.
I voted for myself.
That's another one. Booting your car. Like, people you think put those parking boots that meter maids do. It's like,
or meaning what we would call the trunk.
The what?
The boot.
Oh, no. When they put the tire.
No, I know. But I'm saying also.
No.
There's also another interpretation of boot.
But we're in America, Tom.
Fine, Roger. You're fine.
I'm just a jerk. That used to be a No Doubt song, and then they changed the title.
You're right.
President VR political. Yeah, vote.
I'm kind of liking motion sickness or regular sickness.
Yeah, it's all sickness, really.
Yeah. Dude, where's my car updates? Getting some votes now too, though. Those are both good. I still got half of the file to levelate before I have to pick a title. So.
You know what they're going to do? They're going to do the next Herbie, like the Love Bug, but they'll make it a self-driving, intelligent car.
That sounds cool.
Of course, they'll remove some of the magic because, the original Love Bug, it's alive.
Herbie's just a self-driving car now. He's not magical anymore. Or maybe it's a feud where Herbie meets a self-driving car.
Oh, interesting.
And has to show why he's better.
I want to do that. Ooh, what if Herbie was an Uber driver, right? He just goes around and picks that. That's how he makes money.
Herbie the Love Bug? Suddenly, that's not as cute for kids.
It's a role. It's what do they call him? Don't worry about it.
My parents took me to see all those movies. I think they liked them more than I did.
The Love Bug was the original one, right, or no?
Well, he was always called that, but yeah, I think that might be the title of the first movie.
Because that was the one where the guy saw him in the showroom window, and the car followed him home.
Yep.
And it was like kind of weird, but kind of cool. And then they had the kind of weird racial stereotype because they have to run that race at the end through San Francisco.
Is that through San Francisco? I didn't realize that.
And they had to team up with like a local Chinese or Chinese American, like this guy from Chinatown who ran a business because that's the only one he could get to sponsor him. And he stopped by one of his gas stations every time the gallon number spins around. You hear.
I only have the Herbie Rides Again Viewmaster disc. I don't have the original, so I can't check.
Roger, your memory of this is outstanding. I'm blown away.
Yeah.
Oh, it's just because of that picture's like, really? A gong every time he hits another gallon on the gas pump. It's like, I guess. There's worse things like Charlie Chan.
Always.
Actually, that wasn't so bad. It was just the actor.
It's just bad acting.
It's like the one guy is the white dude that's in yellow face, but the entire rest of his family is just like standard Asian actors. It just seemed kind of odd.
Yeah.
There's so much of that.
What are we settling on for the title then?
So the top one is Motion Sickness or Regular Sickness by TV's Egon.
I'm good with that. Any other thoughts? Yeah. Let's do it.
All right.
I've always wondered. I always figured VR would take off like gangbusters in Japan just due to the limited space constraints in their living spaces. That would be the perfect solution to create kind of an expansive, very rich world without necessarily filling up your room with like a 80-inch, 4K TV or something.
It still could. I just don't think people understand like the potential there until they kind of maybe try it for themselves.
Yeah. Plus, as much as they've really improved things, I don't know that we're there yet for the full fidelity and things that we want visually.
Right.
Well, and it is weird things like, the VR that lets you be on the beach while you check your phone that sound goofy and end up catching on. I'm not saying it will, but it is stuff like that will often be the killer app for something because people are like, oh yeah, but that's fun. I mean, I absolutely assume that if that is available at launch for PSVR, when my wife first tries it out, that will be one of the things she loves to do.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a business opportunity here to set up a chain of VR stores where people going like they do with what they used to do with PC Bangs in Korea, where you just set up like a VR station. People can
there's already a few people trying that out with gaming ideas and like interior amusement parks. Have you heard of those?
Yes.
Yeah.
Be kind of cool, I guess. And then like have sleeping quarters so they'll never have to leave, and supply them with food and stuff. It'll be like a monthly gym membership or something.
Mm-hmm.
Monthly VR membership. My VR membership's up.
A subscription one.
You laugh now, but it's going to happen. It's going to happen.
I laugh because I think you're probably close to.
Someone's going to come up with the hoity-toity name of the holodeck for their chain of stores, and then there's going to be a big kind of trademark suit with Paramount or CBS over the term holodeck.
Holodeck.
Yeah.
Oh, and I guarantee you, someone's going to try to recreate one of those episodes where Captain Picard goes in as like the private dick. You know that one? There's like 2 episodes.
Oh, yeah.
I'm going to recreate that in every boring detail.
Yeah. Actually,
what was that character's name?
Here's him talking. Here, listen to this.
Don't listen to him, Gloria. He's lying.
That's him doing the worst gangster accent ever. Can't remember.
I always thought he intentionally did that to make it kind of ham it up a little bit.
Maybe. Sure. Well, clearly he was trying to be a mobster guy, but Sir Patrick's the man, but not that day. What it was called, but it was some detective name, Tom. He was playing some gumshoe.
Dixon Hill. Thank you,
That's
Tenzak.
Yep.
Oh, wait, Krug got it first, actually.
Jean-Luc Picard, fictional character, was a 20th century detective. I always like how they pick things that are like 20th century for the holodeck. It's never like, oh, let's see what things were like in the 21st century.
Sometimes they did like Robin Hood, and they did
all the stuff they had costumes for. It's really that simple. Like you could totally what do we have wardrobe we can get these guys?
Yeah. What do I have
Yeah. What's on the Paramount lot that we can use?
Private Eye.
Trench coat.
Did you go to Super Potato when you were in Tokyo, Chris?
I did go to Super Potato, yeah. There's basically like 6 stores in Akihabara that have most of the retro games. So you go to each one and price compare.
I wish I would have known the others. I only knew Super Potato, and it was impressive. I spent a lot of time hanging out there, but
my theory is that when Super Potato opened up at the time, nobody in Akihabara ever let you take pictures or take video or anything in their stores. If they saw you trying to take pictures of stuff, they'd shut you down immediately, which is very typical for Japan. Super Potato from day one was just like, yeah. You want to film entire episodes of your video show in our store, unannounced? Yeah, go for it.
Huh.
They became very famous because everybody outside Japan could see what the stores look like.
Yeah.
See everything. Yeah, that's my theory anyway.
That makes perfect sense.
They're just so popular.
Well,
with every.
They were so laid back when I was in there. Like unlike many other stores, you know, when they were closing up, they weren't even telling you like, okay, we're closing up now. They just sort of started turning things off, and you're like, oh, okay, I guess I get the idea.
Yeah. But yeah, they are it is very much like they want everybody to come in there and have fun. Yeah.
I played a little Dig Dug.
Other stores, it's like all business.
Yeah. There were fewer stores with no pictures than I expected. But we definitely, especially outside of Tokyo, they would be like, "Oh, no pictures." I'm like, "Great, well then I won't tell anyone about your."
I think that Super Potato had, well, I mean, I think with Japanese stores there was always these privacy concerns. They want people taking pictures of their stores because they were worried about like the competition coming in and taking pictures of like prices or things like that. And it's sort of been this sort of vestigial thing that's been hanging on, this idea that you can't take pictures in stores. But I think that Super Potato may have changed some of that, and I think the stores now that are opening up and doing well in Akihabara are much more inviting.
And the reason behind it, I mean, the logic behind it always seemed kind of specious to me, because the original reason was because people were taking pictures on their phone of books and they wouldn't buy the book, like it was like a magazine or something. But I mean, you would have to spend a lot of time framing a shot to get something that's legible, especially for phones back in the early 2000s.
Right.
It's like, maybe, I guess.
Well, or it makes sense to me a little bit in souvenir shops where the only reason you're going to buy a green or sticker is because of how it looks or what it says.
Sure.
And so, if you can just take a photo, then there's definitely no reason to buy it anymore. So I still think it's ridiculous. I get the motivation in that case, I guess.
Hey, Tom?
Yes, sir.
I need to hop off with Terpster, but I'm going to call you. Are you around after this, or do you have other stuff?
Yeah, I'm recording Let's Talk About Star Wars in about 2.5 hours.
Oh, that should be.
And I'm almost done here too.
That should be plenty of time.
So yeah, just don't call me around 6 Mountain. From 6 to 7 Mountain, I'll probably be away, but otherwise I'll be available.
Okay, because this thing with him will only take about a half an hour. I'll call you and we'll go over that logo thing.
All right. Thanks everybody for watching. Thanks, Chris.
Thanks, Chris.
Grab me.
All right.
Bye.
Talk to you soon.